Hi, friends, and welcome back. I am so happy that you are here. Thank you for choosing to spend your time doing a little bit of art with me. So, we are back for the 20th week of the Play Along Journal series. I cannot believe it, but we are officially halfway through after today's video. So, we are on the very last spread in this first signature, and I'm going to be showing you both the mustard version and the teal version in this video. So the whole point of this series was to show you how I work in a handmade art journal and to show you two different takes of essentially the same spread. So how you can take something and be inspired with it multiple ways, showing that there is no right, there is no wrong, but just to take whatever instincts come towards you and go with it. So I just started out here with a little bit of stamping in the background, and this one happened to be a hand carved stamp that I made. I really like the repetitive marks there that it creates in the background. There are a few different techniques that I like to implement on more of a blank page when I start, if I'm having a little bit of trouble deciding where to begin. One of those is definitely scribble marks with a pencil, and the others is just to do some repetitive mark making. And a stamp like this that already has those marks made for you is a really good option, and it's really quick and easy as well. I'm taking this botanical leaf punch that I have, and I had printed out one of my digital downloads on a piece of dictionary paper, and the two patterns combined together that were on my digital download and then the text combined in a really fun way. So that is another way that you can use digital downloads, is to actually print them on paper that maybe already has something going on. So I decided that that paper really is too thin, and I wanted to back it with something. And of course you can do that before you punch out, but my other reason here is I wanted to kind of create a drop shadow effect, and so I chose a black cardstock paper and just kind of off-centered those a little bit, just so that it creates kind of a shadow effect, and it will actually help it stick out from the background a little bit more, which was another thing that I was going for. I want to make this punch a little bit more interesting. So sometimes with a punch, if you have maybe a unique design like this, you like to use it, but you don't want it to feel like you're overusing it. I don't know if that makes sense, but so then I like to think about ways that I can make it different. So even if I use it multiple times in one journal, it doesn't necessarily feel the exact same. So just doing something to make it feel a little bit different, the drop shadow there, and then also those white marks on top add just a little bit more interest. I'm just thinking about ways to grunge that up a little bit more. I'm taking my pencil and doing some scribbles. And I'm going to play around now a little bit with the composition and see where I can take things. So even though I did add that drop shadow, it's still not going to stick out from the background enough for my liking for on this page. And so I'm going to take my palette knife and some black gesso and scrape that onto the background a little bit. I'm not wanting, even or full coverage. The nice thing about black gesso is it's very opaque and quick to dry. You see I hit that with the heat gun and almost immediately it dries right up there. I think I just prefer the look, probably 9 times out of 10, of the black gesso over black acrylic paint. In fact, I don't even really use black acrylic paint all that much, but I'm also one that I really enjoy the matte finish that's left with the gesso and how black and opaque it is. A lot of different blacks are more transparent, and I think there's a time and a place for that, but when I'm wanting a really nice true black paint color, I reach for my gesso. I've used Golden brand, and I've also used Liquitex, and to be honest, I don't see that much of a difference between the two. In case you're curious, I think the jar that I have that in is the Golden brand, but I also have a version in a squeeze bottle that's Liquitex. So I think it's just the whatever design you want, and I use both. When I'm scraping with a palette knife, it's kind of nice to be able to dip into the jar or onto the lid. But otherwise, sometimes if you're gessoing a large area, a squeeze bottle is better. I do notice differences in other brands of gessos or paints, like Golden paints I really, really like. But as far as the black gesso itself, from my experience, I don't see much of a difference between Golden and Liquitex. So if you're debating the two, I would say just go with whatever one is cheaper on that front. So I added in a few little masking tape pieces. I have this really thin masking tape that I like, and it's heavily textured, which is kind of fun. I also added in some vintage tape from Wow Studios, and it's a really nice, just little vintage yellowy color there. And I find that it's a really easy way to add a tiny bit of interest or a tiny bit of color to your page without being overwhelming in any way. I decided to outline that leaf there with my whiteout pen, and it just helps stick out from the black background a little bit more. So in the end, you don't really see the drop shadow that I did from the beginning, but I didn't know that that is what I would end up doing with the page. So I don't regret taking the time to add in that black cardstock on the back side. I think it allowed me to then be open to whatever was coming next. So it ended up being that the black gesso that I put in the background did a better job of really making it stand out from the background than the added cardstock that I put on there. I was debating finishing off the page there, but I decided that I wanted to put a quote on the right side, and so I am just going through my stash of pre-done quotes that I've typed up or written up beforehand and deciding which one would be best on this page. So I really enjoy having elements pre-made. When I am working in an art journal like this, I don't want to stop and make a bunch of elements. I don't necessarily want to stop and make a tag or a little cluster, or I don't want to have to walk over to my typewriter and type up. And that's just a personal preference for how I create. I want to be able to pull from a drawer of pre-done stuff, or, a little baggie of pre-done elements. And that's just how my brain works the best. So I encourage you to explore and kind of find the method that works best for you. You may find that you want to work on an art journal spread and decide in that moment, oh, this is what I need to create. And I encourage you to lean into whatever makes the most sense in your mind. So when I am making something, I always call it batch creating, because I make a lot of one thing at a time and then move on to the next thing. Then I have all of those pre-done elements ready to go for when I am working. I decided that that quote needed to stick out a little bit, and so how I did that is I just took some black gesso on my finger and rubbed it around the edges. This is the same type of concept if you're going to use an ink pad to go around the edges, or if you're going to use like a Stabilo all pencil or a colored pencil to go around the sides, or if you were to, I know like in scrapbooking days, it was very common to back your picture, with another piece of paper. It's that same kind of concept that's just going to help it stand out from the background a little bit more. I glued that, but then I also just used my stapler to adhere that to the page a little bit better, just because it was a little bit heavier and I was impatient and didn't want to wait for it to completely dry on there. So the stapler is a quick and easy attachment option that I like to keep in my repertoire for attaching. And the mini one is really great. I like the little size. Okay, so we're starting off here on the teal journal, And I started out with some scribbles on the page. Like I've mentioned earlier in this video, this just helps me to loosen up and to get out of my head a little bit. So I try to list all of the products that I use in the description below. I try to link those if I know where they're from or if they're still available. So I'm using that washi tape is from Wow Studios, which I love her black and white themed supplies. That's probably one of my favorite places to get really fun and unique washi tape. And I'm just creating a little bit of an easy, quick background there. And collage is a great way to do that. But then I also think washi tapes and combining a few different kinds is a really fun way to do that too. So it was going to be a little bit busy with the cluster that I'm putting on. And so now I'm just taking some solid tape, some artist tape, white and black, and placing it in different spots to create a little bit more of a solid contrasting background there. This little cluster that I have is actually one from my 100-day project last year in 2022, where I did small little collage clusters that had fabric and different paper elements to it. If you're interested in seeing all those together, I'll actually put a link down below to look at the gallery on my website where I have them all listed. So having those pre-made like that makes it really easy and fun to take those and implement them into your art journals. I'm just playing around now with the placement of more elements. Overall, I wanted to keep this one a little bit more simple. I love the collage cluster that I'm putting onto it, and so I don't want to overshadow it in any way. So I'm thinking about everything that I'm going to be putting on this page is going to help showcase the element that I want to showcase. And in this instance, it's going to be that collage cluster. So sometimes you can go about your journal spread like that. So in this teal version, I knew exactly what I wanted to highlight. Now in the first version, in the mustard version, I didn't know till at the very end that I was going to be adding the quote onto the page. And that's one of the first things you see when you look at that mustard spread. So there's two different ways to go about it. Well, there's way more than two different ways, but I think this is the perfect example in this video to showcase that there's not a right or wrong. You don't have to start with the focal element if you don't know where that's going to go. Sometimes it just helps to get something down in the background, and I like to kind of embrace both methods. I'm using my hot glue gun to put this down since it's a little bit heavier. I knew it needed a heavier type of glue. A fabric tack would have worked really well as well. I just got this little mini cordless heat gun a little while ago, and I actually quite like it for stuff like this. It heats up within like 30 seconds, which is quite handy, so I like that. But I also could have taken the time to hand stitch it to the page, or stapling it to the page would have been a great solution as well. I decided that I needed a few tiny little art marks on the left side of the page, and I like the way that it emulates the polka dots that are on the right side. So I'm just bringing some of those elements across the page. I hope that you guys loved today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I cannot wait to see you next week. Have a good one.